My grandson, Ari, told me something last month that I have been thinking about ever since. He said, "Nana, I asked the AI a question, and it answered me in 4 seconds. My teacher took the whole lesson. He was not complaining about his teacher. He was genuinely puzzled. As though the speed of the answer was the point. As though 4 seconds and a whole lesson were simply 2 ways of delivering the same thing. I thought about how to answer him. And then I said, 'Did you learn the same thing from both?' He thought about it for a moment. He said, 'No, not exactly.' I said, 'Tell me what was different.' And what he said next is the reason I am here today. He said, 'The AI just told me the answer, but my teacher got it wrong first, and then she worked it out in front of us, and I kind of watched how she did that.' 9 years old. And he had just described the entire EQ gap in 1 sentence. I want to talk to you today about something that I think is one of the most important conversations a parent can have right now. Not whether AI is good or bad. I am not interested in that debate. I am interested in something much more specific. I am interested in what a child learns in the space between the lesson. In the moment the teacher pauses. In the sigh before the explanation. In the look on a face when something is genuinely hard and the person in front of them is visibly deciding not to give up on it. That is not content. That is education. And an AI tutor, however patient, however personalized, however extraordinarily efficient, cannot deliver it, because it has nothing to struggle with. A child does not only learn what a teacher teaches, they learn how a human being inhabits difficulty. They learn what it looks like when someone who is tired and slightly overwhelmed and responsible for 30 other children still finds the particular thing that will land for this one. They learn by watching, by proximity, by the slow accumulation of small witnessed moments, what it means to be a person in the presence of something hard. An AI teaches photosynthesis. A teacher teaches photosynthesis, and also something else entirely, something that has no name in the curriculum, something that has always been transferred between people quietly in the ordinary business of learning together. Now I want to talk about what happens on the other side of the screen, because the AI tutor question is not just about school. It is about what a child's nervous system is being trained to expect. A screen responds instantly. It does not need a moment. It does not have a bad day. It does not look distracted or uncertain or quietly pleased when you finally get something right in a way that makes you feel noticed. It simply delivers. Efficiently, patiently, endlessly. And a child who spends enough time inside that environment, responsive, frictionless, perfectly calibrated to their pace and their interest, starts to develop a very specific expectation of interaction. They expect information to arrive without effort. They expect engagement to be maintained without discomfort. They expect increasingly that the world will adjust to them, and then a person walks into the room. A person who is running slightly late and has misplaced something and has 3 things on their mind and is doing their best. A person who is, in other words, a human being, and the child, without knowing why, finds the person somehow harder to be with than the screen. Less satisfying, more demanding, too slow. Rue the cat, I should mention, has been living with this problem for years. He is not instant, he is not responsive on demand. He has his own schedule, his own requirements, and a complete indifference to what anyone else needs from him at any given moment. And yet children find him endlessly fascinating because he is genuinely alive. You cannot predict him. You cannot scroll past him. You simply have to sit with him and wait and see what he does. I have sometimes thought that Rue the cat is doing more for children's emotional development than we give him credit for. Now, I am not telling you to take away the screens. I am not telling you that AI tutors are ruining your child. I am not interested in being the grandmother who shakes her head at progress. I have seen enough progress to know it usually does exactly what it promises and fails to deliver on the thing nobody thought to ask about. What I am telling you is this. In a world where your child can get any answer in 4 seconds, where they can learn anything from a system that never loses patience and never has a bad day, in that world, the human signal becomes more important, not less. Not the perfect human signal, the steady one, because what your child cannot get from a screen, what they will never get from a screen, however sophisticated it becomes, is the experience of being with someone who is fully, messily, imperfectly present. Someone who gets it wrong and keeps going. Someone who is tired and still there. Someone who looks at them, not at their data, not at their learning profile, not at their engagement metrics, but at them. I want to tell you about a teacher I knew. Not a remarkable teacher, not the kind who appears in films, an ordinary one, slightly chaotic, permanently behind on her marking. She once spent an entire lesson trying to explain a concept she had clearly not prepared for as thoroughly as she had intended. She went around it 3 times, made 2 wrong turns, stopped herself at one point, laughed slightly, said, "Right, let me try that again." And a child in the front row said, "I actually understood it on the 2nd wrong turn." She said, "Well, don't tell the headmaster." That child remembered that lesson for years, not because of what was taught, because of what was modeled. A grown person, getting it wrong, staying in the room, trying again, not collapsing, not pretending, just continuing. That is the steady human signal. It is not a technique. It is not a parenting approach or a communication framework or a set of phrases you say when your child is struggling. It is the quality of what you transmit simply by being present in a particular way, regulated enough, grounded enough, consistent enough, that your child's nervous system, which is reading you constantly, whether they appear to be or not, receives something it can anchor to. Children who have that anchor can tolerate a screen that answers in 4 seconds and a teacher who takes the whole lesson, because they have already learned from you that slowness and difficulty and the presence of a person who is genuinely trying, that those things have value, that those things are, in fact, where the most important learning happens. But building that signal deliberately, understanding what it is, what interrupts it, what your child is actually receiving when you are in the room with them, that is not something that arrives automatically with love. Love is not the signal. Love is the reason you want to send it. The signal itself has to be built. And it has to be built now. Because the screens are not going anywhere, and every hour your child spends in a frictionless, instantly responsive digital environment is an hour their nervous system is being calibrated away from the tolerance that human relationships require. You are not competing with the screen. You are offering something the screen cannot replicate. The screen is not the enemy. It is a tool, and a remarkable one. The goal is not a child who rejects it. The goal is a child who understands, because you have shown them, that some things come from a screen and some things only ever come from a person. And who knows, without having to be told, which is which. The question is whether you know how to offer it consistently enough that your child recognizes it. Ari, for the record, has decided that I am slow. He has mentioned it more than once. I take approximately 4 times longer than the AI to answer his questions. Sometimes I answer a different question than the one he asked, because I think it is the more interesting one. He finds this deeply unreasonable, and yet he keeps coming back. I have noticed that he tends to arrive when something is actually bothering him, not when he needs information, when he needs a person. If you want your child to be able to live well in the world that is coming, a world that will be faster, more responsive, more frictionless than anything we can currently imagine, they will need one thing that no algorithm will ever provide. They will need to know how to be with a person, how to tolerate the pace of a person, how to read a person, how to stay in a room with a person when the room gets hard. And they learn all of that from you, from the quality of your presence, from the steadiness of your signal. The steady human signal blueprint is in the first link in the pinned comment below. It is the framework for understanding exactly what your child is reading when they read you, and how to make what they receive something that grounds them rather than something that adds to the noise. Click it tonight, before the 4-second world gets any faster. And if you are sitting with that, if you are thinking about the signal you send, about the quality of your presence, about what your child receives when the room gets hard, you may find yourself thinking about where you learned to handle a hard room, about the person who was supposed to be your steady signal, about what they did instead, and whether in certain moments, under certain pressures, you hear their voice coming out of your mouth. That is the next conversation, and it is one I suspect you have been waiting for someone to have with you for quite some time.